Winterville Planning and Zoning Board for February the 17th to order. Welcome to all of our board members and our patrons and citizens in the audience tonight. You have the agenda before you for tonight. Are there any excused absences?
Looks like everyone's in attendance tonight, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Okay. Having considered, seen the agenda, entertain a motion to accept the agenda for the February 17th meeting.
Motion to accept.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and properly second. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Approval of the November meetings, which was sent to you in your packet. Was there any discussion, corrections that need to be before we consider approval? Okay, if there are no corrections, entertain a motion to approve the minutes from November.
Motion to approve.
I'll second it.
Moved and properly second. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, new business.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Hope everyone was doing good tonight. Good to see everybody. So we got one action item on the agenda tonight, and that is a rezoning request. Applicant is Evergreen Construction Company. So the property in question is out on Highway 11 and Chapman Street. Between those two, it's parcels 20628 and 28376, just a little over 3 acres. It's got split zoning, so it's a residential on one side, R6, and general business on the other. The proposed zoning district would be multifamily residential with a conditional zoning aspect of it too. So the reason for the zoning change request, or the condition tagged onto this would be to allow for the subject parcels to be developed as a 48 unit, 55 plus age restricted senior rental housing complex. So the adjacent property owners were mailed notification of the rezoning request on February 10th, and a notification was posted on site the same day. So just to orient you guys, this is the property outlined in red here. So Highway 11, Main Street, Chapman, Depot, and 011, so Main and Mill down here. So here's your current zoning. So you can see that split zoning I was talking about, general business up front with that residential stuff in the back, R6. So just an existing land use. So when we say existing land use, just what it means is exactly what it's being used for. And right now it's all vacant. So you can see it corresponds with vacant. So our future land use plan. So just want to remind you guys, and also thank you guys for attending that meeting on the 6th. I think it went really well. Just to orient you with our future land use plan, that's our backbone of what we look at when we're looking at rezoning. So it's our primary document that we're looking at for reassurance that a rezoning request would be acceptable. So future land use plans, character area, all this in the downtown area pretty much is a mixed use character area. And so per that mixed use center character area, I'm going to try to read it for you guys. So the mixed commercial, retail, restaurants, and service-oriented business with a variety of residential options, including multifamily, townhomes, and upper story residential. Also, offices are potentially on the upper floors with walkable places and pedestrian-focused downtown feel. So just a little bit more on our mixed-use center character area. So our big one I want to point out is our possible zoning. So possible zoning would be a multifamily residential here. So I do like the general character definition where it says mixed-use centers allow flexibility to respond to market demands by emphasizing the form of development over use or intensity. These areas feel made for people and have just a little hustle and bustle with some small town hospitality mixed in. So when we look at this, the land use plan gives a bunch of recommendations and policies statements in the back that kind of sums up what the visions and goals of the town are. So it's kind of washed out on the screen. I hate that, but I'll try to make sure I point it out. This is directly from our land use plan. So our land use goals our primary goals are to activate downtown. So the activation comes from actually getting people down there. So we got to have people to activate it, right? So also, one of our big strategies is to encourage housing options in locations within walking distance of commercial and mixed use areas. So under economic development and organizing goals, again, activate downtown. So that's what we're looking at. We're looking at activating downtown with projects like these. So promote retirement-focused living. So here you can see the town is a certified retirement community, and that's a title that's given to us by the North Carolina Department of Commerce. So with that being said, I know you guys know a little bit about it, but I'm going to let Stephen just talk about what being a certified retirement community is, and then we'll move forward off that.
Good evening, Board. Brian and I were talking recently about the Certified Retirement Community Program, and it's something that we've been a part of since late 2014, and it's something that I wanted to kind of give a little bit of a background on, why Winterville's in it, who we are in that program. We became a program. Of course, this is through the state and the partnership, the economic development partnership nowadays, because of our amazing health care and just amenities for retirees in this area. We've got Pitt Community College, East Carolina University. It's a small town. Again, year after year, we get a great designation of being one of the safest cities in the state. So we thought that that's something that really attracted retirees to Winterville especially. There are only 16 cities in North Carolina with this designation, and in eastern North Carolina there are only 6, and that includes Elizabeth City, Edenton, Washington, New Bern, Tarboro, and Winterville. Some of the things that I do, and sometimes it's a day, a weekly basis, we get a lot of people from all over the mostly it's the Northeast or locally, and typically on the East Coast, but sometimes it's all over the country, asking about North Carolina. And they reach out to the state and they say, we'd love to get more information on retiring in North Carolina. Is there any information? So then the state reaches out to the communities, and then we will send them some information on Winterville. And I'll just give them some information on taxes of Winterville, the types of housing that is here. And sometimes the housing is something that some of them kind of stumble upon. In fact, I go to a retirement expo up in New Jersey typically once a year as well for this, and I talk to a lot of retirees and explain who Winterville is, where we are, and why we're a great place to live. And some of them are worried that if they live here with a single-family home and eventually don't want to pay for the yard maintenance or the large house, then do they have to move away from Winterville to get something smaller? I think this is something that would allow for our current residents in the town of Winterville who become seniors. A lot of our parents are getting older. We're getting older eventually, to have somewhere that we can move into eventually and not have to leave Winterville, because we just don't have a lot of this housing here in this area, and especially in the town of Winterville. With that, we've got a lot of residential development right now. Most of it is multi-story, single-family residential. We do have some single-story, single-family residential, and I think that helps with retirees as well. Of course, many do not want to maintain a large yard anymore. And, of course, just in general, we've got a lack of housing diversity here in Winterville. In fact, there's not a lot of houses to pick from. Even if you did want a single-family house right now, we've got the latest census numbers was a 99.2% occupancy rate, which is extremely high. I think the state average is something like 83. So that means 99% of our houses have people in it. So if somebody is coming from an outside area, they'll have to wait for somebody to want to sell the house eventually. Of course, that doesn't mean you won't go on Zillow and see people are having their houses on the market. But it's a really good indicator of, for one, a strong housing market, but for two, the lack of housing as well. Another thing that I think this location would be really unique is the accessibility to downtown. We've got a golf cart ordinance here in Winterville that is something that I think would be really unique to kind of get moving and kind of see that a little bit more visibly on the street, people parking their golf carts and taking their golf carts to restaurants and things downtown. You can even walk from this location as well. So this could potentially help activate downtown, increase daytime population, which is something that we don't have a high daytime population downtown right now. I think the more we get people living downtown, especially retirees, it'll provide that desire and need for the 9 to 5 and even later, but businesses. And the last thing I'm going to say is retirees are a great asset to a community. A lot of retirees volunteer for their community. They sit on boards as town boards and church boards, and it's just a great asset for cities, and I think this is a potentially great opportunity for the town of Winterville. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Yeah, I did have a question.
Yes, sir.
Sorry,
Oh, that's fine.
I was trying to get my thoughts together.
No, that's fine.
It's just, maybe it don't even pertain, but I'm gonna throw it out there.
Yeah.
Is there a possibility of us, little old slice of life Winterville, outgrowing our development of houses and family placement? And if so, do we have any strategies in place as to how to handle an extreme population boom?
I think that's a great question. And one of those, just to give you an example of one thing that the county has said, we are seeing a lot of impact on that is our schools, for instance. Our schools are, for the most part, at capacity. They need more space. We're getting a lot of people moving into this area year after year. And that's just kind of the general answer. With other things, water, that growth will impact, and then growth will also help as well. This is one that obviously wouldn't probably be using the school facilities because it's a 55 and older complex. But in general, I would say one of the major concerns for this area, at least from the county's point of view, is the quick growth in Winterville and Greenville and surrounding areas, and its impact on students and schools, rather. But I don't know, did that answer your question fully, or?
Well, as far as the public school systems and stuff, but as far as, like, we're building and we're developing, and sooner or later, the word about Winterville is going to attract so many people that we may not be able to keep up. And I was just concerned, do we have something set?
Yeah, I think it's an excellent question, Mr. Fleming. But so taking into account that thing, that's why we establish our service territory. So we know exactly what our boundaries can be and exactly what that infrastructure can handle. So the answer is yes, we are preparing for the influx of development. And that's why we have our rules and regulations in place to make sure that when those developers come in, they're meeting our design criteria, they're meeting the, capacity loads and all that good stuff. So we've got our public works that always is on hand to review all of our plans to make sure they can handle it. So in the electric department, we've got our engineers making sure it can handle stormwater. So yeah, we're making sure we can. And, in extreme circumstances, if we ever get to that point where we can't handle it, towns and cities are known to put a moratorium on growth just so we can catch up. I don't think we're anywhere near that right now, but that is an option that we could use sometime.
Further down the road.
Yeah, sometime down the road, right.
Brian, I had a question.
Yes,
What is
ma'am.
the plan that you just referenced when you were in this last response? It sounded like a plan that outlines the
Sure.
growth.
So it's our comprehensive land use plan, the one we just adopted in October.
Oh, I thought you said something different. I guess that was more, that is more about the infrastructure.
What,
and
like service
services.
agreements and stuff, like territorial service agreements and?
Maybe that's what you said.
So we have, where we know the boundaries of where we can service electricity and water and sewer. So they're already established. So once somebody goes in there, we know that they're going to be on town services. Maybe that's what you're asking?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I think that probably was what
Okay.
you just referenced.
All right. All right, so to get back to just a couple more items I'm going to check off. So when we're promoting, per the land use plan, promoting retirement-focused living is one of our primary goals we put under economic development. So obviously the certified retirement community program is something we want to continue to participate in. But some other key ones are remove barriers and consider incentives for senior-friendly housing types in downtown. Recruit developers for individually owned patio homes and try to get some different market offerings that would appeal to retirement age demographic. And then Stephen touched on the golf cart. So this is one I really like, is encourage alternative forms of transportation that are senior friendly. I mean, I think the golf cart thing would really fit into that one. Downtown, our major goals, there it is again, activate downtown, primary goal. So policy is to live, work, play downtown. So here, allow people to live near downtown Winterville by encouraging and allowing more dense residential development within walking distance to downtown. And then the last one, one of our major goals is to encourage investment and redevelopment. And I'll point specifically to the last one, and that is encourage and allow high-density residential in and around downtown. So with all that being said, staff recommendation is planning staff finds the request is reasonable and in public interest because the proposed zoning district is compatible with surrounding land uses and the future land use plan. So therefore, staff recommends approval of the request to rezone 3.27 acres from R6 and general business to multifamily residential with the condition of developing an age-restricted 55 years and older senior living rental housing complex. So with that said, just go through the rezoning process. As we know, this is, you guys will recommend approval to our town council. They will then schedule a public hearing at their next meeting, and then April 13th, we'll actually hold the public hearing for the rezoning request. So with that being said, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to open it up for a public comment session. I will let you know that the representatives from the applicants are in attendance. If you got any questions for them, if you got any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer.
If we could have the developers to come up and for the board to have, if they may have a question to present to the board as well.
Good evening. My name is Tim Morgan. I'm with Evergreen Construction Company. We're located at 7706 Six Forks Road in Raleigh, North Carolina. I apologize. I should have sent some PDF files that we could have put up on the screen, but we'll make sure we have that for the next town council meeting, which is why I face these boards towards the audience. What they have are the same items that you have in front of you, the colored site plan, as well as colored elevation renderings. And then we also provided you with a brochure of some other properties that our Evergreen has developed across the state. Just a little bit of background of who Evergreen is. We have been in business since 1978. As I stated, we're located in Raleigh, and we develop, we build, and we manage our own portfolio. So over the course of 40 some odd years, we now have 45 rental communities in our portfolio, which consist of 2,000 units. And again, we are only in North Carolina. We do have a couple of properties in Greenville. We have one in Ayden. We've got one in Beaufort. So we have a pretty good presence in Wake County, but also east of Raleigh. We employ about 51 or so people in our company, and what we are hoping to do in the town of Winterville is, as Brian and Stephen mentioned, develop a 48-unit, age-restricted, meaning 55 and over, rental community. It'd be a 2-story building. It'd be 24 one-bedrooms, 1 bath, and 24 2-bedroom, 1-bath units. Each unit, this is for independent living. We are not a assisted living type facility. You have to be licensed by the state to do that. And each unit has a full-size kitchen, separate bed area from the living area. Within the community itself, this is about a 50,000 square foot building. About 20% of that is dedicated common area space, which includes things like a main front lobby, laundry facilities, a multi-purpose room with a full kitchen, a fitness center, a computer and library room, and then a TV video room as well. It looks, when you're inside of the building, sort of like a hotel, if you will, meaning all the residential units open into an interior hallway, and they have served by one elevator for the building, and then of course there are stairwells at the ends of the buildings themselves. The building is self-contained, meaning to gain entrance into the building, you've got to have a key fob, and then that same fob will get you into the residential unit itself. If our residents, not if, but when they have guests, there is a call panel system at the front of the building that they buzz the resident, who can then hit a button from within their unit, and the guests can gain access to the inside of the building that way. So we have a lot of experience with this type of housing. It's been very popular. Kind of a typical resident profile is someone that's 67 years of age, single, female, and about 3/4 of them have a car. And so, as I said, we are a management company as well. So, we're here for the long haul. We're married to it. Our intent is to hold them for a long period. So, we've got some that are approaching 30 years of age that have been in our portfolio. And so we rehab them and put them back into use again. I've got, you've got the site plan in front of you. That plan was developed by the Timmons Group, also out of Raleigh. If you've got questions regarding the site plan itself, I've got a gentleman here, Brian, that can answer any of those type questions as well.
I didn't quite understand. You said you had 3/4 what? That was a statement you made.
Yeah, residents, not all have cars. On average, 3/4 of them do.
Cards or cars?
Cars that you drive,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
And I don't know if you had touched on this. Is it income restricted? I mean, is there a limit on how much a person can make, or how is that?
Sure. At point of entry, the answer is yes. Okay. We'll have units that are set aside for individuals at 30% of the median income, 50%, 60%, and 80%. So what does that mean numerically? Assuming a two-person household, that could range anywhere from $15,950 all the way up to $42,560.
Annual income, is that what you're speaking of?
Yes, sir.
And then the typical rent for those people would be what, sir? For one or two bedroom house?
One bedrooms will range $250, $525, and $650. Two bedrooms will range $350, $625, and $750. The building is master meter for water, and so each unit would have their own power bill to pay, as well as any phone and cable that they may choose to have. Trash is included in that rent. And we also have interior storage areas for each of our residents at no additional fee.
I have a question. The examples of these units that you have,
Yes, ma'am.
are these all senior units? Is that?
In that brochure, yes, ma'am.
They are. And I noticed that some of them have amenities, but a great deal of them don't have amenities. Would you?
It may be that we just didn't repeat them time and time again off of that brochure.
Okay, and maintenance of the grounds and the buildings, who maintains that? You do that?
Well, we're our own management company,
Right, so-
and we will employ a maintenance technician, but on all our properties, we third party or contract out the lawn care to a company that's usually local to the community. But as far as like, power washing the building, things like that, again, we will third party that, but, we have a pretty good staff on board. Like I said, the manager will be here locally, but we have a regional manager that she lives here in Pitt County, that she would be visiting the property at least monthly as well.
Will these units be pet-friendly,
Yes, sir.
all of them?
Yes, sir.
And suppose someone is allergic to pets?
Then that's something they've got to deal with. Because when they, come in and apply, it clearly states on the application that pets are permitted up to a certain weight, but, allergies are maybe a concern for some.
I have another question. You mentioned, I think you said you had a building here in town in Winterville?
No, ma'am.
Or in Aden? You said Aden, I think.
Aden.
And where is that in Aden?
I forget the road that it's on. I apologize. It's called Ashton Spring. It's a one-story garden building.
Is that also senior? That's senior?
Yes, it is. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, anything that, we tend to do a name, something spring. If it's got spring behind it, typically Evergreen has done it, and that denotes it's a senior building. Yes, ma'am.
Would these be leased or rented by the month?
No, it's a 12-month lease at point of entry, but then each resident has the option of doing a month-to-month after that, or a 6-month, or a 12-month. But the initial lease, ma'am, is 12 months.
I have a concern. I'd just like to, you asked about any comments on the site plan. And my concern is in the site plan, it does not indicate sidewalks on the property to give the people there access out to the street or future sidewalks. They have to walk through your parking lot. Is that what you want? Because you've heard us talk very much about access to downtown,
Right.
pedestrian traffic, and go-karts, or carts, golf carts. But there's no way to get off of this without walking through a parking lot.
Right. Good observation, good question. And that was a comment that Brian and I were having when we were looking at the site plan. And so, yes, even though the town may not require it, I would strongly suggest that we put sidewalks across the front of the property. Then as other adjoining parcels fill in, at some point the town could require that they do the same. And then, yes, sir, to your point, we would then extend the sidewalks from the parking area to that.
From the entrance,
Yes.
so the building entrance would have a sidewalk.
Now, if you, for instance, it could be like this way.
Okay. So you can walk from the front door to the street on a sidewalk.
That is a correct statement.
Thank you.
And again, this is a preliminary application, but those are all great questions because what you have in front of you is all you know at this moment.
Are there any other questions from the board for Evergreen representative? Are there any comments from the public? We ask you to come to the stand and speak in the mic, please.
And identify yourself.
My name is Bonnie Tucker, and I live at 2570 Chapman Street. And then if you look at the land, mine is the plot right in the meadow. And I would hope that you would not change the zoning for apartments. Just for that fact. Plus, if we're going to do senior apartments, why don't we do it where they have facilities? There's a great senior center 3 miles down the road. We don't have public transportation for seniors in town. They do have public transportation in that area. And how many people would have relatives living with them? How many people would have animals living with them? And would it be a same situation? Kinston put in a senior center on their Queen Street, and it ruined Queen Street. And now it doesn't exist anymore. So, I mean, that's just an example. I'm all for growth, and I'm all for planning growth, but we're putting the cart before the horse without those facilities. Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Jim Paramore. I am a retiree. I just turned 60, I'm 64. I will turn 65 in July, and of course I'm looking forward to Medicare for obvious reasons, to get my costs down. So anyways, I just recently moved here in September from Ohio. And my father was born and raised in Greenville, and he and his brothers moved to Ohio to find work because I think at that time the tobacco crops were drying up or they just couldn't make any money. So they all moved to Ohio, and my father met his wife, or his girlfriend at the time, and they got married, she got pregnant, and he moved his new wife back to Greenville. And she couldn't take the southern heat, so they moved back to Ohio. So I lived my entire life in Ohio, but I'm a freeze baby. So finally, after being retired for 4 years, I had the opportunity to live the dream and to move from the north to the south, where the sun shines all the time and it's hot. And if I get through, I think, the rest of this month and next month, I will actually, for the first time in my life, experience an entire winter without seeing a snowflake. Praise the Lord. So my point is, just like Bonnie said, I'm all for advancing and developing unused land and progress, but it just depends on what kind of progress we're talking about. And when I decided to move to this area, I looked at Greenville, Ayden, Farmville, and Winterville, or as you say, Winterville, and I chose Winterville because it's a wonderful community. And I live on the corner of Chapman and Main Street. And my idea is that it was just the perfect situation. It's a little country house. It's a real nice neighborhood, is it not? It's quiet. I feel very safe there. We have a wonderful police department here. They're very visual in the neighborhood. You never lack for seeing them out and about. And I really love it. I love it a lot. My thought about this is that if you start developing the land around here with big apartment buildings, is that just the beginning, and then does eventually Winterville become Greenville? After my mother passed away, I made several trips with my father back and forth to see family before he passed away. And when we would come, he would say, "I don't even recognize Greenville anymore." So I know every city needs to progress, but could you get to the point where you don't recognize Winterville anymore? And I know living on Main Street during the two rush hours in the morning and in the afternoon, it's a pretty busy and loud street. Doesn't bother me, it never has bothered me, but I notice how loud it can be, and would this kind of development make it even louder? And so my point is that I just like my little quiet community that I'm living in, and I wish you'd take that under consideration. Not a problem with building, but it just depends on what you choose to build. And thank you for listening to me. I appreciate that.
Any other comments?
My name is Glenn Barber. I actually own the house that he was just speaking of, and the one next to it. And working over there at times, I've noticed the traffic, particularly from about 7:30 in the morning until 8:30 after the kids get through going to South Central, I guess. The traffic is really backed up there. In fact, I've seen it backed up almost back to Heinz Store, used to be Heinz Store. In the afternoon, it's the same thing. This project here is probably going to add another 40 to 60 cars. Not to say about the people. I know it says 48 apartments, but a lot of those 55-year-old people are going to be babysitting their grandchildren, if not raising them. So then you're going to have another 75 or even 100 children in the neighborhood. Plus, the fact is, Bonnie here, who has the property that sits in the middle of this so-called project, they're going to kill the value of her property because nobody's going to buy that house. So I'd like for y'all to consider that. I don't know with the traffic, how much traffic will be coming out of there, but there's only one way out. You either come out or either you head back toward Greenville. But anyway, I'm opposed to it myself.
Any other comments? So if there be no comments, are there any questions from the board?
Yeah, I've got some questions for Brian.
Yes, sir.
You talk about getting the people you want to activate downtown and want to get the people downtown. There's no sidewalks on Depot Street, Chapman Street. There is a little piece of a sidewalk in front of the church on Depot, but other than that, there's no sidewalks on Depot, there's no sidewalks on
Sure.
Main Street.
So
if we're gonna put people 55 and older here, how are they gonna walk anywhere without walking in the street?
It's a great question, and I'll answer that by answering your question, Mr. Killian. Earlier, you asking if sidewalks would be required. We would require sidewalks as a site plan, so a multifamily development would go under the same sidewalk standards that a subdivision would go under. So any collector streets, thoroughfare streets, minor, major, whatever, we would require sidewalks on that. So as we have a little bit more infill and redevelopment, every one of those people would be required to provide sidewalks. Now, that's not going to probably doesn't solve all of our problems, and it may be something that the town prioritizes, putting some money into, restructuring the way Main Street looks or Depot, and these things would come with, obviously, the more people we get, the more problems you're going to have as far as directing that traffic. So that's where we would get into, traffic impact analysis and what kind of structures or infrastructure we would need. That being said, I don't know when that'll happen. It's not a when. It's not an if. It's a when. It's something that obviously is part of our downtown plan. You want to have that walkability. To have walkability, you got to have sidewalks. So.
Any other questions or comment?
I do, I have a question. I think perhaps maybe the Aden location and maybe any others that just aren't as close might have the same scenario. But I would be interested in hearing, or at least at the point that this is presented to council, town council, what some of the challenges have been. And hopefully that there would be transparency in that proposal so that it doesn't get duplicated in the town of Winterville to whatever degree is possible. Or at least we go into it with an awareness.
I totally agree. I think that's a great information to have, especially in our back pocket when it's a pretty heavy decision to make, and I think those experiences would go a long way in helping determine.
But right now, what is before this board is just a request for rezoning. We will consider a plat if the application is later submitted, so we.
Absolutely, yeah. So the site plan development will come at a later date, so all that stuff will be hashed out in review. And
so there's been a lot of questions and hypotheticals proposed, but
yes,
right
sir.
now what is before this board is a request to rezone it from R6 general business to a multifamily residential use according to our future land use plan, and it has been recommended by the staff. So again, all other questions aside, what is before us is the request for rezoning. So what is the pleasure of the board regarding the request to rezone this property from R6 general business to mixed use multifamily residential?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that this be accepted and changed to multi-use.
Okay, we have a motion to recommend to town council the change from residential R6 general business to multifamily mixed use. Do I have a second? We do not have a second. All right, then what is the pleasure of the board regarding this request?
Well, I'll make a motion that we deny the request for rezoning to multifamily.
We have a second motion to deny the request for rezoning. Do I have a second to? Okay, it's been moved and properly second. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Okay, you got it now. All those opposed, raise your right. Okay. All right, so we have a majority to deny the request to town council's recommendation from this board. All right, report from staff.
all right, so you guys got my monthly report in your agenda packet. So just some Some things you guys sent to council, the Pedro Balderas final plat and the Brookfield Section 4 Phase 2 final plat. They're both approved by council, and they've been, have been or will be recorded shortly. So currently, staff's working on census stuff, so we're trying to get an accurate count there. Working on boundary validation surveys, which you guys don't really need to know about. It's just making sure our boundaries are right with what the census meeting with our complete count committee in March. I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have of me.
Okay. Any questions, comments for staff? Okay. Comments from the board? Mr. Killing?
Brian, I was just wondering if perhaps, I'm sorry to bring you back up.
You're fine.
If you could supply the board with bound copies of the plan uses.
Sure, I've got copies in my office anytime you guys want some, but I'll be happy to get you some, yes, sir.
Just a bound copy.
Yep.
Are there any other comments from the board? If not, I entertain a motion to adjourn. Been moved to adjourn. Get a second?
Second.
It's been moved and properly second. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting stands adjourned.